Hello again, everybody, and welcome into the Take the North podcast along with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic. I am Mark Grote from Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Today is a very special day for the Take the North podcast. We realized recently that we were coming up on our 400th podcast episode, and who doesn't celebrate 400 episodes of the Take the North podcast, Dan? So to join us today, it is one of the founding fathers of the Take the North podcast. He was here right from the very beginning when the struggle was real. He is of CHSN, where he is coming at us right now looking nicer than he ever has. And he is one half of the highly rated sports talk show Mully and Haugh at The Score. He joins us for this 400th episode extravaganza. Haugh, what is going on, my friend? And Dan, how are you?
Great. It seems like we've overcome a lot, and it really hasn't overcome that much, Grote. It hasn't been painful. I've missed the podcast, actually, but it's a lot of fun here. I am at CHSN and glad to join you on the 400th. That's a lot of episodes. It was fun when it began, and I know you guys continue to do a great job having fun.
David, I looked it up today. August 12th, 2022 was our very first episode of this podcast. That was 3 full seasons ago at the very start of the Matt Eberflus-Ryan Poles marriage. We know how much has changed in the time since then. Our first episode was dedicated largely to the contract impasse with Roquan Smith, if you can recall that. So that tells you how long it's been since we started doing this. I was going to give you guys this as well, because David and I promised, we wrote this out. This was our mission statement in our very first episode, that we were going to be the following 6 things. And we are going to do this today. We are going to be these 6 things. This podcast is going to be informed, compelling, stimulating, current, honest, and responsible. Those were the 6 things that we vowed Take the North would be. We're going to do that.
Like your list. That sounds like more probably collaborative, but I think that was
three of those were yours, sir.
Yeah. So we each submitted 3. I remember. Yeah, it was a lot of fun because we didn't quite know how it would all going to come together, but the audience grew, and really it's been. Yeah, I hope we've been all those things, and then some.
Today, Grote, is so fitting because it's a chaotic day here at Halas Hall. You and I are both scrambling to different pockets of this building. We had the usual Take the North technical difficulties with us trying to find spaces to record. I'm in some random blue room closet down in the basement. You're in some other part. David's in a fancy TV studio, and we're persevering, and we're working through the chaos because that's what good teams do.
That is what good teams do, and we're a good team here right now. Like are scrambling to find things. There are so many things going on out here at Halas Hall today, guys. So let's get to it. We'll continue to celebrate 400 throughout the show. We'll probably bring in studs to give us some cool numbers about what's gone down on the Take the North podcast here on our 400th episode. But first, let's talk about the good and bad news as it pertains to injuries before we get to the newest Chicago Bear. Guys, Tyreek Stevenson and Cole Kmet were back in practice today. Very good to see that, albeit on a limited basis, especially the Tyreek Stevenson part of it. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury. We know what's going on in the secondary, and we're going to get to that with Gardner-Johnson here in a second. But not practicing today, basically the wide receiver room. Luther Burden, concussion. DJ Moore, hip/groin. Roma Dunze, is dealing with a heel injury, right? DeAndre Swift, groin, which has popped up recently a lot for him. Roschon Johnson, still the back injury. Dominic Robinson, ankle. Oh, and then one more wide receiver, Olamide Zaccheaus, with the knee injury today. So it's classic injury fluctuation for the Bears here right now, guys.
I think Tyreek Stevenson is probably the most encouraging of that group. You never quite know what the other Wednesday designations really mean, but you do, I think, find some hope in that Tyreek Stevenson being limited, because if there's any position where they need all hands on deck, it will be the cornerback position this week.
No question that they're going to need that secondary to be as whole as possible when they go to Cincinnati. Grote, it was jarring to look at that wide receiver group as they broke for individual drills today. And you're looking at Jade Walker and Devin Duvernay and practice squatter Maurice Hardtime Alexander running around taking the lead 3 reps because the top 4 receivers are all down right now. And you're like, wow, this is a tough thing for a team that needs all the practice reps it can get, all the practice polish it can get. And they're going to walk into this week with an entire Wednesday gone without a single of their top 4 receivers participating.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty frightening situation when you see that. And as Haugh said, hopefully as the week goes on, that picture gets a little bit better for the Bears. But I would say that the highlight of the day today, the news of the day, which I think I might have heard first today on the Mully and Haugh show, right around.
That's where I heard it first too, as David blindsided me with it at 7:30 in the morning.
So Dan was on our segment. It was at 7:30, and the news came across. Adam Schefter tweeted it out. It was a surprise, I think, to most people. Wasn't expecting this to happen. And I asked Dan for an immediate reaction. I think we both were a little bit taken aback because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, CJ. I mean,
wait a minute. We can actually.
We're going to break some news to Haugh now. Since he breaks it to me, we're going to break some news to you. Go for it, Grote.
Be ready for this, man. Have your reaction ready, because the first question that was asked of Gardner-Johnson was, what do we call you? Like, what do you go by? Are you Chauncey? Are you CJ? Which one is it? And he said, CD. And I don't exactly know still. He mumbled something about why CD. Dan, I don't know if you picked up parenthetically why CD. So it's none of the above, Haugh. It's CD.
Okay.
He spelled it CEEDY. So get ready for CD Gardner-Johnson to be a part of your Bears program.
Is that his rap name? Because I know he's a rapper. He does have some musical interests. So I wonder, just the explanation of his name requiring this kind of detail helps us understand perhaps why this is his 3rd team in 5 weeks, why this is his 4th team this calendar year. This is somebody who does not fall under the category of low maintenance, maybe the opposite. So I think, in fairness, tremendous football player, one of those guys that I think you want to embrace when he's yours and hope that he can stop the run, play the nickel, do everything that you want your feisty defensive backs to be, and hope that he doesn't cross that line, because if he hadn't done that, I think that the Eagles wouldn't have traded him. Other teams in his career. Now, he's a highly accomplished DB. 6 interceptions twice. He said he's done that twice in seasons. But this is a guy who's well-traveled for a reason. As I said this morning, I will hold my applause. I understand with the appeal. You're hurt in the secondary. Kyler Gordon is on injured reserve. This may be lights of fire there. But I do think that they're to pretend like there's no risk because we're laughing at his jokes and he's got a cool back game. I don't know. I think you proceed cautiously.
I don't think anybody on this podcast is pretending there's no risk. I think that this is a huge gamble by the Chicago Bears. And look, I asked Ben Johnson and Kevin Byard about it today because I do think that, like, from a football standpoint, it makes perfect sense. As you mentioned, it marries up with Kyler Gordon going to injured reserve. Ben Johnson articulates that Gardner-Johnson is going to play exclusively in the slot. And they're going to give him one position to master. It's where he started his career under Dennis Allen. And so the type of versatility and instincts he has to be a weapon in Dennis Allen's defense. But you articulated it great there, David. He's been a lot of places recently because he tends to wear out his welcome quickly. And so I think it's a huge gamble for a head coach in season 1 who's been building this very firm culture inside the locker room to now add this match, right? Like this match to that room and say, like, either you're going to light a fire under the rest of the defense or you're going to burn the whole thing down.
Well, a couple things that I could add to this as well. We did ask, and we're going to play some of this obviously at some point in time, but I started the questioning, David, on sort of the controversial road of CD Gardner-Johnson. And specifically, I gave him a chance to talk about what happened in the year 2020 with both Anthony Miller and Javon Wims. And honestly, Haugh, I thought he might find it fun or like, oh, yeah, that was a while ago. Those crazy guys. He didn't want anything to do with it. He was like, he just kind of looked at me, and I don't remember what his exact words were, but basically it was F you, I don't really want to talk about this. And then somebody else followed up on it. I think it was Finley, who asked him, hey, what did Anthony Miller say to you? And he's like, come on. He's like, that was what, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So he didn't want to talk about that. He also did not want to talk about Haugh. He was asked the very last question was a question about some of the character issues. I think surly was the word that the great Dan Wiederer used during the press conference. Such a good word. He's a good wordsmith. You know that about, and as you are, Haugh, you two, I see why you two did such a good podcast together with some of the great words you use. But he was asked about that, and he was basically poo-pooed the whole thing. He said, I don't have to answer questions like that.
See, and also I think it's interesting because I think there are two things. He will be familiar with the defense because, as Ben Johnson really pointed out, I mean, did he play for Dennis Allen? I think Ben told us that about 3-4 times, right? They wanted, he has familiarity with Dennis Allen. So there's that. That is a good thing. I also think for context, you have to remember, and there's some stories that support this, I think, that are out there in the New Orleans media. One of the reasons that he left the Saints was because they couldn't come to terms with the contract extension. And there was also some simmering tension, I think was the phrase that was referred to between Gardner-Johnson and Dennis Allen, the head coach at the time. So this idea that it's this, oh, I love you, Dennis. Oh, I love you. I haven't seen what you've been up to. I don't know that they got along that well when they were in the same building. So I hope that it goes better now. Ben Johnson did everything but say, I didn't know the guy in Detroit. Like, well, he was on injured reserve and we may have passed each other in the I mean, this feels very experimental, and it could work out very well, but it is an experiment.
And so listen, like he was with Ben in Detroit, but that was an odd season in 2023 where he I think it was a torn pec that moved him to injured reserve in September of that season. And I've talked to people close to the Lions who said that he just left for several months and went and rehabbed in Florida and wasn't really around the team. And then eventually got cleared. I think he played in the playoff games as they started to make a run to the NFC Championship game that season. But look, like my phone with the text that I got back, didn't leave me feeling like this was going to be a great character addition to this locker room, that there's going to be a lot to deal with, that it is going to be a high maintenance player that Ben Johnson as a coach is trusting his locker room leaders to keep in line. We'll see how it goes. Right.
My phone included the following text from somebody in the league said, just consider that the team that drafted Jalen Carter traded Gardner-Johnson because he was too much of a character risk.
Here's a direct quote in my text right now. I'll read this one because you guys will like this. He's the worst, but he will probably give you a couple good storylines before he turns on the whole organization.
Well, and this is why, Dan, as you and I were walking from the very remote parking lot today to Halas Hall, I wondered to you out loud, like, is this a one and done situation? Like, they signed this guy. Obviously, they have a need for the position because of the injuries in the secondary. But look who you're going up against specifically. You're going to get up against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Bears don't want to get embarrassed this week. So they're this is clear to me that they're looking the other way when it comes to the character stuff. And they don't have intentions of keeping this guy around a long time. I don't really know if it's going to be one game and done, but this was a desperate move by the Bears to bring this player in because of what's coming up on the schedule.
It raises the question to me, and David, you can chime in on this, on how serious Kyler Gordon's injuries are, because Ben Johnson has been very sort of, I don't want to say wishy-washy, but he said, we hope that Kyler's injury is on the short end and we can get him back after the 4 games that he's required to miss on injured reserve. But a move like this sort of gives you an indication that this might be longer for Kyler Gordon, and we can't trust him to be back by Thanksgiving. And so we need a player with experience and versatility to occupy the slot cornerback role. It gives me a lot more worry about Kyler Gordon in addition to the worry I already have expressed about CD.
Well, I think that's a good point because it does suggest that Kyler Gordon might be more than just a few weeks or the 4 games for IR. It also does this, big picture wise, organizationally. You are a general manager that has stayed away from certain draft picks. I mentioned one of them in Jalen Carter. Mike Green is another guy you just played against. They were deemed too controversial and too much of a characteristic. Maybe,
but David, that was for that time though too. You can't leave that part out of it. I mean, that was a team that ended up like a bunch of that was a rebuilding team. This team has real vets.
I know the distinction, but let me finish. I think that when you're talking about when you draw a line for character concerns and organizationally, you're going to stay away from those kinds of draft picks. You just basically, I don't know if you change the rules forever, but there's a lot of context that has to be twisted to be able to see, like, now the next time you stay away from somebody because you're afraid of the culture being polluted. Hey, buddy, what about October 29th when you signed the guy who was on his third team in 5 weeks? So I think that you've got to be conscious of all that's going on here. And is that make too much of it? Does that expect the worst? It's looking at it pessimistically. This could all work out great, and he could be a guy that has the forced fumble that gets the Bears the ball back and they go into the playoffs. But you have to consider all the options at a day like this.
No doubt about it. And there's so much more to talk about with CJ Gardner-Johnson. Maybe we'll get to a little bit more at the end. And Dan, I'll let you have the final word here on CJ in a second. But I will say, news-wise, as it comes to CJ Gardner, 2 things that need to be known. Ben Johnson did finally say during his presser that, yes, CJ Gardner will play on the inside. That is the place where, however, Ben Johnson did not guarantee that he would be up to speed and ready to play. When we just talked to CJ Gardner, he said, see you Sunday, as in he'll be there, he'll be ready to play. I believe that. I don't think you bring in a player who's not ready to go for this game against the Bengals.
My biggest disappointment, CJ Gardner-Johnson after practice today said he had not yet gotten to the 40 up downs that are a requirement to join Dennis Allen's defense. I mean, DA knows what this is. CD knows what DA is all about. How does he get on the practice field today without doing the 40 up downs?
My biggest disappointment is that he's not wearing a single digit. I mean, if you're going to be that guy and bring all the attention to yourself, what's he doing wearing 35? Way 35. Too conventional.
Neil Anderson, baby.
Well, we were talking 35s today. Neil Anderson's a great one. Roland Harper's a great one. You ready for this one? Todd Johnson. You guys remember Todd Johnson? Todd Johnson. Yeah. Let's not forget about, I think, James Burton. You guys remember James Burton? He was a number 35. I want to say he was a cornerback. I'll have to check my work on that. But yeah, so that's the story of CJ Gardner-Johnson. He is here. You will hear plenty more about him throughout the week here on Take the North, or maybe even in this very special podcast about which we are talking right now. But now, in the podcast, we want to do something right now. We want to do 3 timely topics. All 3 of us have something on our minds about the Bears organization that we would like to share monologue style. I say we start with one of our founding fathers. That would be David Haugh, our very special guest here today. And David, I know that you had some thoughts on the upcoming trade deadline.
I do, and I'm going to offer them. I started this podcast with Dan back before you guys had a cool merchandise, and he didn't call it TTN. TTN.
There weren't even SUVs when you started it, man.
I can remember brainstorming with Wiederer about what are we going to call this thing, and he came up with Take the North. It was brilliant, and it was Dan's baby, and I'm glad it's still going, but we digress. All right, this is the thing. I think the trade deadline is a week away. And there'll be a lot of conversations. Heck, we saw the Eagles trade today for a cornerback they need. We've seen the Rams trade for a cornerback they need. Who doesn't need a cornerback? The Bears do. They got one today. How long will he last? But I think this, when you're talking about all the possibilities, you bring in edge rusher, a guy that could be a boost to the pass rush. You've already allocated a lot of money. You could talk yourself into a lot of different positions like running back. Breece Hall's out there. I would stand pat. I would not do that. I would not give up draft capital for a rental player. I would not look at this season as we're one guy away, much the same way we had the conversation preseason about Micah Parsons. That's different. There are no Micah Parsons you're trading for at the deadline, I don't believe, unless you're going to put together a deal for somebody like that. But at the deadline, you're not that one player away from making a playoff run. So don't overreact. Don't put the future, or don't put the present ahead of the future. Remember the future. And in that vein, you might want to think about being a seller rather than a buyer. Being a seller might be something that gets you the draft capital you need if you are convinced, as you are, Ben Johnson's your guy. As you think that maybe Caleb Williams is going to grow with Ben Johnson. Get your draft picks in line, supplement your draft class, and maybe shop a guy or listen to offers for a guy like DJ Moore or somebody else who might pop up in trade conversations. That would be the direction I would go rather than going to chase something that's not going to be there.
David, let me flip this on you for a second because I'm curious. I got in a heated conversation with my colleague Kevin Fishman at The Athletic last week over the constant curiosity on Twitter about, this is more than a week ago, about Braxton Jones being a trade piece for the Bears. And obviously he wasn't, and he's wound up on injured reserve. But if you were another team elsewhere, and obviously you're only making moves if you think you can contend this year, who besides DJ Moore would you be shopping for?
On the Bears?
Yeah.
Well, you might ask about one of the linebackers if they're willing to move him, but I don't think the Bears would be willing to move any of those guys. You might ask about Kevin Byard. Because he's somebody that obviously could jump in and make an impact. You might see just how committed they were or in love with Zacchaeus, who could make a quick transition. Special teams guy like Travis Homer, not going to get you a lot in return. I'm naming names of things
Sure.
that, like, you know what? You have two kickers under contract. I don't know if anybody's going to trade for a kicker, but you do have 2 kickers in camp. So DJ Moore is at the top of the list. And I think the drop-off is significant to other players that you would shop. I don't think there's an offensive lineman on that list, unless it's Ryan Bates. Ryan Bates is the guy that might be somebody that it helps somebody solidify their interior offensive line. But there's somebody like that maybe.
Ryan Bates. He's becoming like, oh, yeah, Ryan Bates, always here. He's going to be here next year. Like, oh, yeah, Ryan. Remember when he was trying out for center with Coleman Shelton, and it was the second time that he came back to the team? That's an interesting – and I'll tell you what, Haugh, at some point in time, I will bet you Ryan Bates plays offensive line for the Bears this year.
Wow. That's a bold prediction.
I'm just saying, like, not
the North
because
is known for bold prediction. That qualifies as both stimulating and compelling. What you just thought there.
I don't know how disciplined it was on my part because I cut you off right there. You were about to say something
responsible.
else. I will say the one thing that I wanted to say in the name of time, I'll keep it kind of quick here on Caleb Williams, and this seems to come up about every couple months or so. The volume goes up really high on the Caleb conversation and what consumers can handle, what is fair that is coming out of our mouths relative to where Caleb Williams is. And I think I've always had a pretty good perspective. I think and this is especially for those that are detractors of the criticisms of Caleb, and all three of us know that there are tons of those people out there, and they are totally and completely entitled. What I don't like, what bothers me is, for the most part, I try to, and I know you guys do too, we are looking in the now. We are looking at exactly what is happening right now in these last 2 games. And in these last 2 games, Caleb Williams has not looked great. So it is fair in those cases to completely pick apart the game, look for the exact, and be nitpicky. Like, I get people coming, why do you got to be so nitpicky about him? Because he's the most important player this organization has ever drafted, playing at the most important position in sports. And it's crazy to me that there are so many people who don't want to hear about how this quarterback can get better, the flaws that exist, the fact that he's probably a little bit behind right now where he should be in terms of his development. I'm not saying like he can't catch up and he can't still be great, but he's behind. And I continue to be befuddled why people just don't understand like what is happening now, instead of like thinking that's a projection of this guy's going to suck or something, which I have never said.
Do you feel like, Mark, what you just said, people's opinions are framed by their preconceived notions or by previous projections they themselves have made? So the way that he is covered is certainly colored by what we thought would happen, and we want to stick to that no matter what. So when you do that, you lose objectivity either way.
I think that's a really good and complex, layered question, or a great question with all sorts of layered answers, including this, David. And that is that from their perspective, and I get this because I say it myself, he has to be good. He can't not be good. You know what I mean? So at that base, I understand it. And then to answer the question further, I think it is based on what they saw this guy do and what they'd heard about Caleb Williams and hearing the word elite and generational. I think in people's minds, they are so dug in because he can't be anything but great. And there's no room for criticism because you got to give him more time, even though what we're seeing right in front of us the last 2 games have not been good enough.
Last thing I'll say in this, and then for yours, but I think when you talk about this pod and the evolution of it, we went through that, Dan. You'll remember like how Justin Fields, the end, and we had to talk and balance and always remind people about we had the No Excuses tour for Justin Fields' final season, and that segued into getting ready for Caleb Williams and putting everything into as much context as we possibly could and tried to be responsible there. So great point, Mark. Great way to put it. Good expression.
David, I'm just going to punctuate that because about 18 months of this podcast were spent in the throes of the Justin Fields analysis storm that overcame this entire city. And I said all along that when you sort of have desired outcomes driving your assessment of something, it's going to lead you down paths that you don't want to go down. And that's what happened for a big chunk of the Bears fan base in wanting Justin Fields to be their long lost forever savior at the quarterback position, and then steering every single piece of assessment they did of Justin Fields through that desired outcome. I don't think you and I ever got the proper apologies that we deserve from a lot of people out there for what they said to us about our assessment of Justin Fields, which has proven very, very relevant in recent weeks with what's happened with him in New York. That's an aside. That's a whole other episode if we wanted to go down that path.
Yeah, and I got to say, guys, I enjoy the engagement with people. Even if people disagree, it's just the caustic nature in which people disagree, and that it does become personal, and that's the problem. And we try to, and I've not always succeeded in my work as a host or the podcast in not making, we've all probably made things personal before, but the goal is to not do that. And again, like, I still think, I don't know if Caleb's going to be elite, but I still think there's a chance for him to be a very good quarterback.
And he has 10 more games this year under the guidance of Ben Johnson to figure out how far he can take year 2, and then we'll reassess there.
I keep on looking at Haugh right now in his fancy suit and the sick hair, and I imagine there's a little bit of makeup. Maybe it's all natural. I don't know. Are you good time-wise here with us, Haugh? What do you got, about 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, we're at 10-minute warning here.
We're going to keep going rapid. We're good clock managers on Take the North. That's been proven over time because we've all got different responsibilities elsewhere.
Haugh's changed, by the way, hasn't he? I mean, just the whole thing, the attitude is just unbelievable right now.
So big time.
I'm kidding.
What's my attitude about? What's wrong with my attitude?
Total joke.
You just look too good, man. That's all. Go ahead, Weedsy.
My little thing here is a very fascinating look into Ben Johnson's leadership, and I'm curious to see how this evolves over the rest of his first season as a head coach at any level here. And Ben has been incredibly honest, okay? And we hear that every single week. We hear honesty that informs our view of this football team very well. Grote, you got him earlier in the season to say out loud that this team was not yet practicing at a championship caliber standard. This week, after the Baltimore game, he said on Sunday after the game, again on Monday, and then again on Monday, that he wants his locker room to take greater ownership of not only the penalty cleanup process, but the improvement efforts of this whole football team. And when I pushed him on Monday for specifics on what that would look like, he said, if you see something, say something. These guys have a firm grasp of what I'm asking for as a head coach, and I need them to start policing it on a daily basis in the locker room, on the practice field. Work habits have to be where they need to go. What was fascinating to me is on the airways where you guys both work full-time at the Score, we had 2 former Bears who've played more games with the Bears than almost anybody, and Olin Kreutz and Patrick Manley, disagree on how quickly that type of public calls for discipline and everything else that Ben is asking for will wear thin on the players in that locker room. And Olin seemed to be more against it, saying, like, you better be careful. You haven't accomplished a lot here yet. You better not, push those buttons too often or in a way that makes people a little bit edgy in that locker room. And Manley said, I kind of like it. I kind of like that he's raising the bar here and setting a standard and making it very clear that he's not going to settle for anything less than that. I don't know what you guys think of this, but I do think that we've got 10 more games to kind of feel out how Ben's going to navigate this road. I think he's very self-assured. I think he's very self-confident about his leadership style. I think it would work for someone like me. I think I would follow him anywhere he want to go. And it'll be interesting to see what this room of 68 players thinks.
I think it reflects how confident he is they're going to win. Because if you don't win, that is the quickest way to lose a locker room. You call out players publicly and you say, these penalties, we're done. We're done. It's on you guys. I don't think that was a smart thing to do. I honestly didn't think. I was a little surprised. I appreciate and have applauded his candor and his intensity. And I have said, I don't know that this team is always going to be able to match his intensity. And they're going to have some lulls because of that. But it's a dangerous game when a coach starts to publicly kind of point to the players and say it's up to them. We've done all we can do, because I do think that, when you get to that point, it's a calculated risk, because you're gambling on the fact that you're going to win and they're going to be able to do that themselves. So there's part of me that understands it and does appreciate the fact that you're putting it in the players' hands. But at the same time, I do know how perception can overshadow and suffocate reality. And you don't want to kind of a case of another coach in Chicago who has succumbed to all of that.
Yeah. I've got 3 words that I'd like to categorize right here, gentlemen. I've written them down: credibility, accountability, and empowerment. And I'll just go through them really quickly. Ben Johnson we have to remember, this ain't Ben Johnson walking in. This isn't Matt Nagy walking in. Like, people don't know who he is. We know the resume. The credibility is there with Ben Johnson. The next word, accountability. Bears players have been telling us on and off the microphone last year, and I realize half this locker room is gone from last year. They told us that they were craving accountability. And trust me, even though Ben Johnson plays dumb on last year, I wasn't here for any of that. If Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and Georgia McCaskey were smart, they told them every single thing that went wrong here last year and where you have a chance to be a hero this year. So allowing accountability is huge. And then the part of empowerment is allowing these players to, here, Cole Kmet, Grady Jarrett, Cairo Santo. Maybe Cairo Santo's going to air out the locker room. Who knows? Like, allow those players, allow Kevin Byard to take over and make it better. I think it's like, I compared it to like a dad being like, you know what? You guys don't want to do it? Then we're going to turn this car around. You guys do it your way. And that eventually he's going to come around and he'll continue to be the authority. But for now, he's saying, you guys don't want to listen? Figure it out yourselves.
David, Grote just smoothly gave us a 3-word review of Ben Johnson's approach, which was, he didn't even know he was doing it, but that's how seamless and smooth this podcast is.
I love the 3-word reviews. You guys get hundreds of them. It's great. It's a great concept.
Look, Dan, I'm just trying to impress Haugh this entire time. I just want him to know that the podcast that he left in my hands. I've been since you called me that one night and said, "Hey, would you be interested?" I have felt the pressure to make sure I am at least as good as David Haugh, which sometimes, maybe 1 in 20 shows, I am.
This reminds me of when Mitch Trubisky was at the Bears 100 on the same stage with Jim McMahon, trying to impress Jim McMahon. Very similar vibes here.
Wow.
I need your acceptance. I do.
That means you're Mitch and I'm drunk.
Why don't let's do 2 things. Let's get into our 2-minute drill, because we're all on a time crunch here right now. And we'll bring in Adam
2-minute drill. 2-minute drill.
Adam has been the executive producer of this podcast since day one. Yes.
David remembers that sound effect very well.
I love setting up the 2-minute drill. That meant we're almost over. Now it's time for us to drill. Boom.
What up, Studs? How you doing, buddy?
Right, Studs.
Hey guys, good to have the whole crew back, to the OG crew back together, plus Grote. So, all right, I dug up a few numbers in relation to the podcast since we started in August of 2022, and I will go rapid fire here as we're short on time. Total downloads in the history of this podcast. This is just on audio. This doesn't include our YouTube numbers. This is just our audio numbers. We are, as of the recording of this podcast, at 3,074,057 total downloads throughout the history of our podcast, which is pretty good.
Love it.
The single best month we have had in the history of this podcast was in August of this year. We had 141,896 downloads. That's currently our best mark. We've gotten close there a couple times since, but not quite beat it. 141,000 in a month. And then our single best episode was shocking to me. It was a segment that we posted about thoughts that you guys had entering the 2022 Bears season. That episode has gotten 10,000 downloads. No other single episode has gotten more than 6,000. I don't know why that one was so popular, but there you go. And finally,
The first one.
Yeah, it was one of the first probably 10 episodes we posted.
Amazing.
And
was that the one where Dan promised to take his clothes off if the Bears won 8 games?
He might have. I don't know.
What kind of an operation were you guys running before I got here, Mike?
It was real. It was real.
That never occurred.
It was
That's
real fast.
Neither
and loose.
honest
I'm
or
kidding.
compelling.
I'm kidding.
Real fast and loose. And finally, the last thing I dug up here, on the website we use to post our episode, you can look up what countries have downloaded how many episodes. And we're actually gotten to damn near every country on the planet. Obviously, the United States has the most downloads with well over 2 million. Canada is number 3 in total downloads. The UK is number 2 in total downloads at 57,000 plus. The number 4 country with the most downloads was actually a little shocking to me. It's Australia. It's not Ireland, where the NFL is pretty popular. Australia has the 4th most downloads of this podcast, beating out Ireland by about 1,000. So
you know what that means, Grote? We got to get Tory Taylor here soon.
I was going to say, you just gave us something to talk to Tory Taylor about.
And yeah, I wonder if them drafting Tory Taylor helped boost our numbers a little bit. And
Josh Getty, he's just downstairs. I could go see if Getty did.
Oh yeah,
bring him up.
Bring up Gids, man. So good stuff.
There you go.
It's good stuff, man. Thank you for that.
That's amazing that it started when it did and has grown to what it is. And it just goes back to, you guys done a great job. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy listening to it now on my runs and just keeps you up to date. And the post games are the best. And I know you guys, it's crazy to put together sometimes. And it's still a challenge, but it's worth it. And I think some of those numbers confirm that it's still all worth it.
David, I'll be honest with you. I get a certain sense of satisfaction when I get a text from you that says "good episode," and you're like, "Oh, I'm glad." Honestly, like it's nice to hear that and to know that you're listening as quickly as you listen to some of the episodes. It's like, all right, that means we're doing something right. That you feel like you need to come back and get our perspective on some of this.
I got to get some hot takes somewhere. I got to.
That's right. That's right.
Somewhere.
And you are the George Washington of the Take the North podcast, minus the wooden teeth and all that stuff. But
all right, well, I gotta go to this other thing now. But thanks for bringing me back in.
You're the best, dude.
Want to do it again, and we'll see you guys soon. Have a great weekend.
Always good to see you.
Seriously, David, really appreciate you coming on. We love you, man, and have a good show, buddy. Have a great show. Have a great show.
Yeah, good show, guys.
Morning, Mark. Morning, Willie.
I know you got to go too, Grote, so we got to wrap this up. I will just say this, that I do want to get into tomorrow. I want to get into the curious case of the 4th down pass in the final minute of the game in Baltimore and what we learned from Ben Johnson today about that misfire from Caleb to DJ Moore. I think there's some good talking points that marry up with your monologue from earlier about how we cover Caleb. So remind me in our next episode to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing that I will say to you is, man, you and I were both in the room for the great coat drive, which is going on right now for the Chicago Bears, which is a worthy cause and something that we could talk about at maybe another time on the podcast. But we also had Kevin Byard in the room at that time, and I couldn't get eye contact with you, but you asked Byard a question about his, locker room, the past that CJ Gardner-Johnson has had is not always being a great teammate. And he said something to the effect of, he did say he compared him to Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
And he said, it's good to have a guy with a little juice in the locker room, a little juice on the field. I was like, oh my God, look at this, Weedsy.
So maybe KB, one of my favorite people in that locker room with one of my favorite concepts, juice, will sell me and get me to come around on the addition of CD to the mix here for the remainder of the 2025 Bears season.
Oh, man. Dan, you're the best. Let's get the heck out of here. More all week long on Take the North. Thanks to everybody, by the way. Thank you for everybody who's been a part of this podcast from the very beginning. You heard the numbers. That is you, and we appreciate it. And we will continue to do the best podcast in town talking about the Chicago Bears like we do. But trust me, we think about our listeners and our viewers and everybody that participates in this podcast a ton. And so that's all I'll say, Dan. If you got anything else to say, please feel free.
That's it. You got to roll. I got to roll.
Yeah.
We got things to do. We'll talk to people tomorrow. show. We're going to have
Yeah.
our usual game preview episode, Bears-Bengals, big game here this week for the Chicago Bears.
For Dan Dubb from The Athletic, for Adam Stasinski, our executive producer, I am Mark Grote of The Scorer, saying thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you.
Great talk. See you out there.